So, what is the threat to America today? Is it millions of illegal immigrants crossing our border? Is it war in Europe continuing with Russia and nuclear power? Is it war in the Middle East? Is it a rising China? Or is it you getting to choose who you want to be the 47th president? Well, if you ask the mainstream lying legacy media, here's their answer.
What would a second Donald Trump term look like?
Well, he cannot be the next president.
That means he can shoot the first lady.
To make it illegal to run against him, to throw his opponents in jail, to shut down the media.
He will be a king. He will make himself into the Führer, and he will make everybody raise their hand and salute him.
Using martial law against the American people.
He wants to rewrite the Constitution.
Every one of us, our freedom, our liberty, none of us is safe.
He's going to have people around him executing against an enemies list.
Assassinate generals.
Ordering troops to attack American citizens.
Trump's very well-armed and extremist base will try to kill people.
We used to call it Trump derangement syndrome as a joke. It's not a joke anymore. They're saying that if you elect your president, he'll be Hitler, he'll be a Führer, he'll kill generals, he'll kill people who disagree with him. How did this happen to one of our two parties? Let's ask the man who literally wrote the book, Get Trump. He is Professor Emeritus of Law for Harvard University, and he's a good friend of the show. Welcome to Greg Kelly Reports, Professor Alan Dershowitz.
Well, thanks. You know, I actually coined the term derangement syndrome. I coined it in a different context. About 10 years before Trump got elected, I coined it in the context of Israel derangement syndrome. I used it against Noam Chomsky. What I said is, there are people out there about whom you can talk any subject, Chomsky, about linguistics, about many things. Mention Israel, and his brain becomes scrambled. He gets Israel derangement syndrome. And then I started applying it to Trump on Martha's Vineyard, because I could talk to people on the vineyard about anything, about the ocean, about fishing. But if you mention Donald Trump, their brains became scrambled. You couldn't have a rational conversation with them. And now what you showed here with my colleague Lawrence Tribe and others really exaggerating, it's a form of Holocaust denial. Because what it is it's saying, look, Trump is as bad as Hitler. Hitler can't be that bad if Trump is as bad as Hitler. Trump doesn't have any concentration camps. He doesn't have any shooting squads. Maybe he will. But to make comparisons to Hitler really diminishes the horrible suffering of 50 million people at the hands of Adolf Hitler.
Well, also it's counterfactual. I mean, he was president for 4 years. This isn't a hypothetical. He didn't shoot people. He didn't have death camps. So, as you say, it is an affront to those who survived the Holocaust. It is those who suffered actual fascism. It is an insult, and it's a diminution and a dilution of all of those words. But let's jump to that topic and your original coining of the phrase derangement syndrome. You have a new book. You wrote it in the first incredible, 30 days after October 7th. It is the book, The War Against the Jews. I want to play this cut because she still has her job. The Washington Post had an op-ed against her, but she's still the president. This is President Gay of Harvard University, who said that, you know, genocide of Jews, it's kind of a contextual thing.
Dr. Gay, at Harvard, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment, yes or no?
It can be, depending on the context.
It can be depending on the context. Now, Professor, the Washington Post says she has to go because of now the 40 instances of alleged plagiarism. But isn't the bigger issue that saying in a college that has Jewish students that shouting from the river to the sea is a contextual chant?
Well, especially since she was the queen for years of cancel culture and of ficcensorship. If you said anything negative about an African-American student or a gay student, or if you misgendered somebody, if you engaged in a microaggression, there was no context. You're out. Harvard withdrew acceptances from students who, at the age of 15 in the chat room, said something negative. They were among the worst universities in the world when it came to free speech. Fire, this group of First Amendment protectors, ranked Harvard last. So, yeah, it is a matter of context, but the context is that Harvard goes after everybody, and that President Gay discovered the First Amendment and freedom of speech only as applied to hate against Jews. You can say anything against anybody and you get thrown out. But if you say anything against Jews, it's a matter of context. And remember the First Amendment. And that's why she and the whole bureaucracy of diversity, equity, and inclusion have to go if Harvard is to regain its status as a great research university in the world. It's becoming a laughingstock around the world. Tragically, I devoted 50 years of my life to teaching students, future senators, future congressmen, future justices of the Supreme Court. There was a time when Harvard was a place of learning. Today, Harvard is a place of propaganda and a place of hatred. And she is the wrong person at the wrong time in the wrong place to lead Harvard. So I'm hoping that the elders of Harvard, this special corporation that nobody knows how it gets elected, very know it exists, will realize that they have to recognize their own error. They made a terrible mistake appointing her. Now they have to make the right decision and say, you're just not right for the job. Let her resign. Let her resign with dignity. Give her a nice position as a professor of African American studies, which is what she is. Let her continue to do her research, but not as president of the university, not as the leader of the university.
Yeah, with despite the fact that she would maintain that position as the only professor I've heard of who isn't a professor of practice, who did so with just 10 published articles. If you're dissatisfied with your Christmas gifts, then I warmly recommend to you Professor Dershowitz's books, Get Trump. He invented the phrase derangement syndrome, and his latest, The War Against the Jews.